By the way, the movie that he suggested to watch, The Cabin,
Yes.
I don't know whether I told you guys, but I found it on this obscure streaming service for free. It's an interesting movie.
Mm,
Mm.
I have watched it. Yeah, it is interesting. What do we want this one?
So did you get good things out of it?
Well, I did, because we all hold on to our own demons, don't we? And he was basically just working through them. But it was just how, and I know it's a movie, but it's a true story, based on a true story.
Yeah.
And just how visual things were for him. I mean, I know for myself with my demons, it tends to be more of a fear-based factor, but he was having real visuals. But I won't, it's not a spoiler alert. If you get a chance to watch it.
I had to stop what I was going to say about the actors in there, but yeah.
And I think it's called Plex, Plex is the streaming thing.
Right.
You sign up for it, but it's free.
Right. Oh, okay.
Mm.
Well, the purpose of stories is really, I mean, fiction's great, but the purpose, every story has the hero's journey, which is what we can learn from, and
that's right.
hopefully not have to repeat whatever they're doing or relate to what they've done. So yeah. I'm enjoying book club that we've got here in Nannup. There's a couple of them around actually, but one of them, I've joined one of them and I'm reading books I never would normally read, and I actually got motivation to read because you want to get it finished before you get to the book club meeting. So
yeah. So what's the book that you're reading?
I have forgot. Oh, the one that was put forward for the February meeting is actually on Spotify. So I've been listening to it audio rather than actually reading it, which was kind of good for that one because it's a bit dry. It's not fiction. This one's about what's it called? It's about this guy's done his own kind of anecdotal research as well as a bit of science behind 3 particular drugs: opium, caffeine, and peyote. But that's not what they called it in thing, like mescaline. They call it mescaline or something. So yeah, it's an interesting book. But I'm glad I didn't try and read it. I'd fall asleep. Much better listening to it.
Yeah.
Now I've found all these other books that are on Spotify that are like with my subscription. So I've got lots of audio I can do now.
Nice.
So we completed number 2 last time. So who wants to read number 3? Normally Carly's coming back in. Shall I start? Number 3.
Sure.
Yeah.
Chapter 4, part 7, number 3. You found it in the book?
Yes.
What page
Thank
is
you.
it?
Page 70.
70. In contrast, spirit reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else, nor does it make any attempt to establish what is true. It knows that what is true is everything that God created. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation because it is in complete and direct communication with its creator. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. Since only beings of a like order can truly communicate, his creations naturally communicate with him and like him. This communication is perfectly abstract, since its quality is universal in application and not subject to any judgment, any exception or any alteration. God created you by this and for this. This mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with functions it was not given. That is why the mind cannot totally lose the ability to communicate, even though it may refuse to utilize it on behalf of being.
And why it continues after we pass. We can't just switch off. Can we?
Can you be that shut down that you can't communicate anymore? I don't know.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Even who was that lady who was it Ellen Keller or something? She was blind and deaf, and she
Helen Keller.
What was it?
Helen Keller, yeah.
It was Helen Keller, yeah. So even, and you know, they thought she was mad, so she was in a hospital until a nurse actually came in and worked out that she was deaf and blind.
Mute.
So it was very hard to communicate with her. But then, you know, just see what's happened from that, just from someone actually exploring what's going on and asking some questions and actually exploring and finding out what's wrong instead of just writing her off as mad. I've actually had a bit of an aha moment with some friends on that as well, how there's someone in our group who how shall I put it? Well, I've worked out it's about anxiety. Like they can only communicate with one other person in the group. They can't particularly, and they don't really interact with anybody else, and they get quite demanding about it. And it's definitely the ego's response to something, but it's actually anxiety from being in a group that makes them so clingy to the one person. And it gets quite defensive.
Did they know this person beforehand?
Yes. 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 But anyway, back to this one. Jane's coming in. I might just send Gary a message in case he has lost track of time again and actually still checking email. Because we miss him when he's not here, don't we?
Hi, Jane.
Happy New Year, Jane.
Happy New Year, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I was in a meeting, and great to see everyone.
To you too. I'm just quickly sending Gary an email because he's not here either, in case he's got sidetracked again.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we know he's probably okay. As you say, he just got sidetracked, right?
Yeah.
First of the year, kind of going in every which direction.
Yeah, it's hard to get back into it. I just felt it flew by as well. It's kind of
hasn't it?
It was too quick. I love the gap between Christmas and New Year, and I get to kind of, you know, contemplate the year that's been and the year that's coming, but it just flew by.
Yep.
Sure did.
Yeah. We're doing number 3, Jane. I might read it again, shall I? Because I think it needs a bit of time to absorb it, this one. Unless someone else wants to read it. Right. Okay. In contrast, spirit reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else. Nor does it make any attempt to establish what is true. It knows that what is true is everything that God created. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation, because it is in complete and direct communication with its creator. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. Since only beings of a like order can truly communicate, his creations naturally communicate with him and like him. This communication is perfectly abstract, since its quality is universal in application and not subject to any judgment, any exception, or any alteration. God created you by this and for this. The mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with function it was not given. That is why the mind cannot totally lose the ability to communicate, even though it may refuse to utilize it on behalf of being.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. A lot to unpack in there.
It is.
Is this the first time we've come up with communication as far as there's a kind of concept in here? Not sure.
I love this one because it reminds me of our intuition
Mm,
and our
Mm.
perception,
True.
mm,
and then our alignment to our intuition to the universe, as in God's will, and whether we take it on and use it, use the intuition, or whether we don't.
mm. Carly, when you said, that's a nice little summary of this actually. When you said our intuition and our perception, is our perception our intuition, or is it kind of in conflict with it because it can be changing all the time?
Yeah, our intuition is our God's will.
Yes.
If we're tapped into the higher consciousness, and our
Mm.
perception can change all the time
Mm.
because of our traumas and what
Yeah.
we perceive through ego, not just intuition.
Yeah, and as we clear them as well, our perception changes when we clear the trauma away and finally make the intuition a bit easier to access.
Yeah, and then it's sort of like aligning our spiritualness, isness, with our highest soul or God, and then being in the trust of that and following it.
Mm.
But then our perception can come in and we don't trust it and we don't take an action that could have
Yeah.
been the right action.
I find
Because
that if I'm not thinking and if an answer just comes up when I ask a question, or if I'm thinking whether I should do this or not, if I just go with what comes up without anything else coming in, that's usually the way to go. But then the brain kicks in and tries to make it logical, or tries to talk me out of it.
Ego.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
There's
It's
the
wait till
perception.
tomorrow.
Mm.
it's like we question it.
Yes, exactly. We don't trust it. Not all the time, anyway. Getting better at it. It reminds me as well of what Gary talks about with the Hawaiian philosophy of the three minds, and how our highest mind, which is this, I can't remember the actual wording, but how the highest mind talks directly to spirit, and that talks to subconscious, but it can't talk directly to conscious. So that communication loop, understanding that kind of is quite interesting too.
Yeah, it's almost a form, well, it is a form of acceptance,
Mm.
of accepting your higher self when you hear it.
Well, talking about it's making it clearer to me. Has anybody else got any insight or anything they want to, any particular phrase that's a bit confusing or anything? Or that?
And I think
I just want to, oh, go
Sorry.
ahead, Linda.
You go, Jane.
All right. Yeah, there's a pervasive thread that we all share as humans, and it's that the brain, ego wants us to be safe. Our protection, our self-protection factor is so hardwired. And along with that, what comes with that is, because it's on constant alert, it really dumbs us down. It disallows the spirit to flourish and fly, because and it all gets back to the Course in Miracles. Yes, keep me safe, Callie. Yes. And it's almost like it's the rally cry. I gotta be safe. Am I safe? It's like every waking hour we operate on this safety mechanism. And to go along with that, we think that because we've been literally schooled, we go to school, we get out in the summertime, we have time off as kids, as young adults, doesn't matter. We all look forward to not having to go to school. Give me some time off. Well, so here we are, we're trying our best through the Course in Miracles to educate ourselves. But what do we do? How much time do we spend? How much do we invest in our own selves on the off time? We don't. I mean, not enough, because we're just, we have to, like as Joe Dispenza so aptly says, we have to get out of our own way, because the human condition as it exists right now is lame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And our go-to knee-jerk reactions are is faulty. And so we need consistency to build up the soul, our spirit, that part of us that is forever. But what do? We support the everyday human that we are. Oh, I need new slippers. I got to go to the grocery store. And we're so busy in life, but are we taking care of our souls? Do we recognize that? Do we act like we're souls having a human experience? No, we don't. We act like everything is the material world, and don't you dare take anything away from me. So
Yeah.
it's a battle of sorts.
The challenge is to actually, not just do the reading here every week, but to actually take it into our daily lives and our habitual thinking to come up with different ways of being in our relationships to everybody else and ourselves and the world around us.
Right.
And I don't know what these blue lines are that came up on the screen.
That's
that's
wild.
That was me, but I didn't realize I changed something. I was trying to move my screen across because I'm on my mobile phone and I'm not used to it. And I pressed something, and then I just thought it was my end. I could see the blue line.
I don't know
So
how you got into it to do that, though. So that's really weird.
I know, it was
It's
like
like-
a blue edit pen, but I accidentally pressed it and then thought I could move it to the left, but it scribbled.
Oh, we'll just have to ignore that.
I didn't see it. Do it
Poltergeist
again,
for a
Kelly.
minute.
No.
No, I don't want to touch anything because I don't know how to fix it. And on my phone, it's too small to know what I'm doing.
What you were saying about protection there, Jane, as well, it reminded me of, there's so many shows that I've, like, we're talking about fiction and stories before as well, but there's so many movies and shows that have people doing things like, but not telling the other person what they're doing, and they're just trying to protect them. That's what they say. They're trying to protect them. And this is a form of, for them, it's a form of love, but the protection's actually causing more grief and more problems, especially because it hasn't been communicated. That it's the solution in the story is actually to take away that protection and have the communication.
Right, right. So true.
Mm. Do you remember what you were going to say, Linda?
When you were talking about the three minds,
Yes.
you know, you can actually see that quite clearly in here now. It actually is talking about the three minds, really. Well, in my mind, which is a bit stranger than other people's. So, but yeah, I can see that clearly in there now.
Yeah, so and that's the whole thing, I think, of what Gary says, is that we keep, you know, there's just one message in here, but it's just repeated in different ways so that we eventually get there.
Yeah.
We done with that one then? Anything else you want to? No? All right, we shall move on. Who wants to read number 4? Go.
I'll do it.
Maybe Joe, because he's been really quiet.
Joe.
Yeah, I can jump in. Existence as well as being rest on communication. Is that existence? Am I reading that wrong?
Yes,
Yeah.
existence
Yeah.
as well
Yeah,
as
you're
so
good.
you're talking about being
Existence.
as like human being, not as in,
Okay.
I think.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
start from the top. Existence as well as being rest on communication. Existence, however, is specific in how, what, and with whom communication is judged to be worth undertaking. Being is completely without these distinctions. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. To whatever extent you permit this state to be
Curtailed.
curtailed, okay, I would have said that right. You are limiting your sense of your own reality, which becomes total only by recognizing all reality in the glorious content of its real relationship to you. This is your reality. Do not desecrate it or recoil from it. It is your real home, your real temple, and your real self.
Thank you, Joe. That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So, from my understanding of this, then, is that existence is kind of like the ego thing as well, keeping us small and judging, whereas being is the being is the actual, what we're trying to be here is being. We're trying to be human beings.
Yeah, that's what I get too. What I hear in that was our being is in communication with truth, higher self.
Hmm.
I particularly love that it goes on to say that it's your real home, your real temple, and your real self. It's like that just slaps me upside the head in the most wonderful way.
It helps to have that image for me, because to recognize, as we're talking about recognizing what's intuition, to have that kind of visual or context of it being home will help identify it, I think, as well. When I listen to my intuition, I don't need to know the how either, but I find that when I start thinking about when the thought process kicks in and I'm trying to think about how to do it, that's probably how I can recognize that that's the perception again, not intuition. Because as soon as I start saying how, I feel like I'm getting chained in and I have to do it this way. Whereas I've found that if I just go with a decision that feels like intuition, it doesn't matter how. Just take one step at a time, and you find the how
as long as
you
you're
go.
doing it. Yeah, as long as you're doing it,
Yeah.
the how will.
Yeah, I think that's another thing as well, is the actual doing of it. So if you find, this is what I got out of Napoleon Hill as well, is that when you make a decision, you go. You just go. You don't sit and contemplate anymore. You make the decision and you take action.
It's very counter to a lot of, the world.
Yeah, absolutely. The logical brain says you've got to think all through all the consequences. And
I find that comes up a lot being the mother of a teenager. You sort of, it's like it's your job to interfere.
and protect.
Yeah. And yeah.
So maybe more protect than interfere.
Yeah. Well, I'm personally, I like to just try and be supportive of whatever's happening, but it's sort of it's like then you be around other parents of teenagers, and it's sort of, and I'm like, oh, but they're sort of, more directing their child more than I am. Perhaps I should do that, and then I do all this dowty business. But yeah.
What do you do? Does that work, Coralie?
Wow, that's quite a judgment, actually. I can judge it as working or not, if you know what I mean, because I've got like a 16-year-old who's thinking about what they're going to do, how much more school they're going to do and stuff. And so I don't know, because at any point along the line of their life or my life, you sort of go, yes, they're a success because of this, or they're not a success because of this. And, it's all just a judgment, I think.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, because at the end of the day as well, as long as you're taking some action, you're going to learn from it, good or bad,
Yeah.
But you can't. But sitting on the sidelines means that you don't learn, you don't grow, you don't live. And having a partner with the teenage girl, I can see the struggles of like the struggles of being supportive and being there to communicate with versus being, giving them some direction. Yeah, it's a tough call. When do you kind of say, no, you can't do it that way, I'm not going to let you do it that way? And when do you just say, well, these are the consequences, so you make your own decision? Jo, you're in the same boat, really, aren't you?
My son's 15.
Hey, Carly.
And I push him into those life lessons, and I'll give him a heads up. Like, if you go that way, this could occur, but handle it. I'll be here to catch you when you fall.
Yeah.
I'll dust you up and pick you back up. I'll let you fall, because you got to learn these life lessons to obtain wisdom, or you're really just enabling them, and they're not really ever gonna amount to much because they're not gonna have the experiences to fall back on. So yeah, it's a difficult line to walk.
Mm.
I love this. Thanks, Carolee, for bringing this subject, because I love what Joe just said about attaining the wisdom, because that's probably what I wasn't able to have access to with my mum and dad's way of training, because they were very supportive in what I had to choose. And so that makes total sense. And then I love the other piece with Carolee was saying, because the outcomes then become our perception, that we either had success in our perception or failure, where this is talking about being in communication with the truth in the now, and then back to our conversation and creating from the will of God and our intuition, because our mind is so powerful that I often have found my opportunities is when I support the kids just by thinking the end result that would serve them the best without speaking it.
Mm.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
my intention of an awesome end result, and then sort of thanking them. Like when I've done it with my son who's 16, when I communicate, he's not interested, but when I do it on the internal version of my mind, he picks up on it telepathy wise and actions it, and I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah, I think we've forgotten how powerful we actually are, and communication is extremely important because we have all this ego and all this stuff to cut through. But if you have that ability to just sit with someone, or even just sit with yourself and come up with this intention that you want for them, like you do, Carly, and that is the miracle, isn't it?
Yeah, because often when I speak it to them, it becomes an external perception of what I want, not what their higher self wants to experience.
Yeah. And with people, it's harder
Very
because of
powerful.
everything. But I find that with training my horse, if I just set the intention, I actually don't even say anything, and I'm looking in a direction, she's going that way. If I'm not clear, then she doesn't know what I want. She can't trust me.
Mm.
And I think on an intuitive level, humans are like that as well. If we have a clear intention with people around us, we have the intention, this is what we want to do, and other people pick up on that. Whereas if we're indecisive and we're questioning ourselves, and then we're not giving any guidance as to what our intention is.
And that, it rings true, I think, like even with cats. Like my cat, I think I mentioned to the group a few weeks ago that she got out of the van. For those who don't know, I live in my motorhome. And I'd left windows rolled down in the cab. And at some stage during the early morning or later that night when I was asleep, she got out. And I thought that for her it was about escape and going out and having adventures and what have you. But a few days later, and because it was still like, it was a real shock to me that it had happened, and because I constantly tell her that she's safe. As long as she's with mum, she's safe. Is the fact that she just couldn't get back into the van. So whether she meowed at the door and I didn't hear her because I was sleeping or not, I don't know. So, and there's really nowhere safe around the van outside that she could just curl up and go to sleep until I decided to wake up in the morning. So she went off and found a safe space. But now I can actually leave the door of the van open when I'm here. She will go outside and I don't have to worry about her going anywhere because she's happy to stick by the van, which made me realize that it wasn't about her wanting to bugger off that particular night. It's just that she couldn't get back in again. So I think, animals they're very perceptive. They know what's going on. I had a bit of a bad night a few nights ago and Gracie was right there, right next to me. She stayed with me all night, and she doesn't normally do that. She'll go sleep upstairs or out in the cab or whatever, usually, but she just stuck with me all night. So they're really amazing. And so I pay attention to that because I may not actually see it or understand it in myself. So if she's sticking close by me, there's a reason for that. It's lovely.
And you kept her inside for her protection.
Yeah, because my ultimate aim in life is to keep her safe. So
So maybe her escape was her lesson to you.
well, I sort of thought maybe I should wind the windows down again and see if she does it again. I'm not sure that she would, because she couldn't get back in. There would have been some scare factor there for sure.
And she's probably just curious, but didn't think of how to
How she could get back. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn from animals, I think. If we slow down and pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we
And look
done
at what
with
they're doing.
5? Yeah.
Mm.
Anything else we want to pull out of number 5? No, pretty happy with that. Lovely. Coralie, would you like to read number 6?
Sure. The Bible repeatedly states that you should praise God. This hardly means that you should tell him how wonderful he is. He has no ego with which to accept such praise, and no perception with which to judge it. But unless you take your part in the creation, his joy is not complete because yours is incomplete. And this he does know. He knows it in his own being and its experience of his son's experience. The constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels are closed, and he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him.
Mm.
Unless you take your part in the creation. So are we creating enough? Are we allowing our full expression with what we create? That's what I'm getting out of that.
I can't see who's got hands up on the phone, so I'll go. But what I love, I can't read it from my angle. When I heard God has no perception, I thought that was cool, because perception is not full. Yeah, it's limited. And then be part of the creation. And I sort of took that as our mind creates fully with alignment with God's will. And it's always creating our mind, which is why telepathy can be negative and positive. And so be part of the creation is being part of the mind of God for me.
Beautiful.
And will.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't like about number 6 is when it goes into saying the constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels are closed, and he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him. I think putting that he's lonely is, it's
that's kind of a judgment too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like it's a guilt maker.
Yeah. You're making God feel bad.
It's ascribing humanness to God.
Yes. Yes, I think the intention is just to create imagery, but yes, the language, and I find this a lot with the language, less so now, but yeah, the language can be quite triggering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really what this is all about, isn't it? It is about triggering.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Find out what triggers you, so you know what you're focusing on and what you, yeah, I don't know.
And it's drawing you into the conversation, really,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it triggers you to
Sometimes
actually,
need that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to dig a bit deeper. Because the whole he and his and him thing as well is all in the male context in this book. That took a while for me to get over. And even the, like, I just have no Bible study at all, and very anti-religious family. So, you know, everything being God and spirit, whatever, it's been a bit. It's been an eye opener. Now it's like nothing. It's just, this is the way the book's written. It's like when you read Shakespeare, it's like, I don't understand what's going on here, but then you read it for a bit longer and you kind of get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You read it for a bit longer still, and you end up talking like it.
thou art so true, Veronica.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
You being or not to being? That is the question.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. We actually skipped number 5.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm
We
going back
have.
through and reading it like, wait a second.
We
I know
have.
I did 4.
Yeah. Yeah, because I
Sorry,
was
that
thinking,
was
well, what was
me.
Joe the last one to read? And then I thought, well, you know, it'll come up. It'll be found out sooner or later.
This is the accountant doing the numbers here.
I was
Oh my
about to
God, I
start
think I might
writing
change
this
accountants.
meditation. Crazy.
Oh dear. Sorry about that. Are we happy with 6 then? We can go back to 5 and maybe it'll make more sense then.
Sure.
Linda, do you want to read number 5?
Okie dokie. God, who encompasses all being, created beings who have everything individually, but who want to share it to increase their joy. Well, that's us, isn't it? Nothing real can be increased except by sharing. That is why God created you. Divine abstraction takes joy in sharing. That is what creation means. How, what, and to whom are irrelevant, because real creation gives everything, since it can create only like itself. Remember that in the kingdom, there is no difference between having and being as there is in existence. In the state of being, the mind gives everything always. Wow.
I love that.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad we went back to it.
Yeah. Good pickup.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh, thank you
Joe.
all. Like, I was losing myself. I didn't understand what happened. Did I disappear for a minute or something? But that's cool. I like this one.
Yeah, I do too. I'm glad we probably won't get through another one now, but yeah, this is a nice one. Creation. This one gives me the image that creation is not an individual thing either. Creation is about everybody and everything included.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess emphasizing that word sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing is the joy.
Yeah. Love it. It's quite true as well, really. I mean, you know, I can feel joy while I'm walking through nature, but I think it doesn't really sit until you share it with others. I guess I'm sharing it with the other beings in nature while I'm there. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's sharing. And it can only be shared with others who are not So yes, I can feel the joy in nature because I'm sharing it with other beings that aren't actually human and don't have an ego to get through all this stuff, like horses in the paddock, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, especially when I think what's so wonderful about living in the time that we're in is that science is indicating and showing us more and more that nature, whether we're talking about, you know, a plant that grows or a redwood tree that grows, there is communication between nature. There is an order, you know. I will often think about, you know, how is it that, you know, 15 or 25 birds can fly and they don't bump into each other,
When they're in
right?
formation. Yeah.
You know, because they're of nature. They are, you know, again, it gets back to of late, you know, I've learned about the magnetic resonating that animals pick up on, the energy in our universe. And it's through magnetism that they stay together and form. Because they know the energy, they sense and they pick up and they go forward with certainty. Because, you know, what we're talking about here, you know, it's certain, it's joyful, it's, you know, one bird doesn't intuit with the other, like, are you sure? You know, do we really want to go here?
No, if they do, the hesitation will cause a crash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, I've got
Which is what happens in real life.
yeah,
There's a crash,
absolutely.
a crash cause because there's all this hesitation and fear
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I'm listening
Or
to
enough.
an audiobook by Gabor Mate at the moment, and I can't remember what it's called now, but I had to take down this little
The Myth
thing
of
he said.
Normal?
Yes, yeah, that's it.
What
just
is
got
it?
my
Oh, say that
mail.
again.
Hold
The
on.
Myth of Normal.
The Myth
Like,
of Normal.
yeah. Yep.
Oh, and who wrote it?
It's a lot thicker than I
Gabor.
thought.
I'm glad I'm I'm listening to it.
Gabor
Gabor
Mate.
Mate.
Yeah,
This
Gary
is-
Yeah.
recommended it.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. There's this, but just this one quote that I wrote down out of it: "A culture where nature has become the exception is a culture in trouble."
Mm.
Can you read it again, please?
A culture where nature has become the exception is a culture in trouble.
Right.
True.
I kind of felt that fitted in quite nicely with us talking about nature, not needing to think about things and just go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
With
It's funny because
everything
that
else
actually
fine.
that triggered me actually because I heard throughout my childhood, think about things more, think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas
Well, I
now I do, but in a different way. Like now
Yeah.
it's more about
Consequences.
yeah, it is about consequences really. Whereas when I was younger, it was like no consequences. I just wanted to try everything, do everything. And if I got hurt in the process, well, that was just the way that it went. Whereas now I don't want to hurt myself. Yeah, and obviously not hurting anybody else as well. So it's about
There is a kind of
thinking about
balance
it
there
differently.
because I see people who do. Murray is one of the classics. He just goes and does things and without thinking about the consequences. So there has to be a bit of balance there. Although,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, nothing of harm comes from it. So maybe not.
Yeah.
Probably not so much consequences to what will happen to me, but consequences as in like with birds flying and not banging into each other. It's more about being aware of everything around you, being aware of where others are. Not so much about how will I be at the end of it, but how does it fit in with everything else that's going on.
Maybe it is that whole awareness thing, just being more aware, rather than, I guess when you're younger too, you're relying on your parents or, you know, adults who are constantly in your life they're the ones who are telling you everything. They're giving you direction. They're telling you to do this. You've got to go and do that. You know, blah, 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 blah. Whereas as you go out into although I didn't really grow up till I was 50, you know, let's face it, if I'm completely honest.
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
so it's really only been in the last little while that I do think about things, but it's a whole different concept. And I think it's because I don't have people telling me what to do, so I have to make sure that it's right for me first, as well as making sure that it's right, you know, that decision is going to be right for others around me, that I'm not going to hurt anybody or upset anybody, which ultimately I do, because it's just shit happens, really, you know. I don't have to look for trouble, it just finds me. But yeah, so it's quite a different concept now to how it used to be.
Yeah, I found that a lot as a kid, that people would always say especially my mum, that you have to think about what's best for everyone else, not yourself. But now I'm flipping that on its head, because you actually can't make other people happy anyway. You can't do anything for anyone else, so you might as well look after yourself, and then everyone can be happy.
Yeah, but I think that's the whole thing. Like we're brought up to think about everybody else first, whereas how can you do that if you're not thinking about yourself first? Self is very important. It's very important.
You can't know what's best for anyone else, though.
Well, you can't if you don't know what's best for you. You know, so until you actually love self first, there's no intellectual or physical way of loving anybody else. So it has to be about self first, and it's not a selfish thing like we were taught to believe. It's the complete opposite of that, in fact. It's a disrespect that we were taught to think of other people first, in my opinion.
And I always remember that statement from my mum. You're only thinking of yourself first.
Yeah.
You're always thinking of yourself first. What about everyone else?
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, if we were to challenge that at the time, we were told, well, there's no bloody book about parenting. Well, there's a shitload of books now. And I saw this woman in the supermarket yesterday, and look, I did end up judging her, but not in a mean way. But she's got 2 kids. One would have been about 2. The other one would have been maybe 4, coming up 5. And she'd given them clear instructions before they went. And I heard her telling them something before I went. They followed me into the supermarket. And then I saw her further around the supermarket. And she was saying, okay, so you're touching things that we're not buying. And these 2 kids just looked at her, and she said, well, we had this discussion. So she's using all these adult words in an adult way about, and I'm thinking to myself, I just wanted to say to her, lady, they've got no clue what you're talking about. None whatsoever. You can't talk to them like adults because they're children. They're little, and they need to be left little for as long as possible. And if you don't want them to touch things in the supermarket, leave them at home. You know, and it just made me quite cross to think that she was trying to give them this education in the supermarket. That's not the place for an education. Don't do it. It's not right. And it doesn't suit other people around the place either. So she was just being selfish. It was all very ego driven. And it was almost like she was reading it from a script, and it just made me really angry to think that she was doing that to these kids.
But
I'm
her
guilty of
intention
that. So
was good.
Well, I
Sorry,
don't
Kat.
know that her intention was. I think she was showing off. I really do. I think she was trying to say to other people, what a great mother I am, and look at what I'm teaching my children. That was how it was coming across. And it just, to me, it was just pathetic. And I really just felt like saying to her, just leave them at home next time, lady. Get your shopping done, and then you don't have to worry about that. But I think she actually thrived on it, and it annoyed me. So I went to another aisle. And I could still hear her.
I kind of know. I know what you're saying, Linda, because it's almost like you're speaking to them like they're teenagers that they really can comprehend. And by the way, are you a mother who really wishes they would grow up?
Mm.
You're really kind of annoyed that, and so you won't talk down onto their level. Rather you want to make a point, and it's like it's not working.
Yeah.
I was saying, I'm guilty of doing this when my son was younger, and the best piece of advice that I was given was think back to you when you were that age. And that really floored me, because when I was, 5, 6, 7 years old, I just wanted to have fun. I wanted to touch everything. I wanted to see how everything worked. I wanted to play with it, experience it, and all that. And as an adult, I'm like, please don't do this. Please don't break that. Please just stay with me. Let's get this knocked out and get done. Like, adult responsibilities compared to a childhood adventure are two totally different worlds. And when that piece of advice came in a year or two later, it changed my whole way of parenting. It really stopped me from being a dummy.
Oh, look, I don't have kids, but it's I can understand that it's difficult. And I guess no matter what you are teaching your kids, there's going to be somebody who doesn't agree with how you're doing it. So, but I think the less obvious that you make it, in my mind, is the better way of doing it, not just, talking loudly in a supermarket and getting people to stop and stare at you. That's just not the way to do it.
I love this. Oh, sorry, V.
I was just thinking, reading this would help.
I love this because while I'm listening to everyone, I'm thinking it depends on what I personally have as a fear in my perception of what's right and wrong walking down the aisle with my children. And before I went into the shop, my fear of perception of others upon me, maybe bullying, and then, or their judgment. And then it's funny because I didn't worry about stuff like that. Like, I took them shopping and I never once thought they'd touch anything. So they never did.
Yeah.
And I honestly never had any fear in that area, but I had a fear in a different perceptional area, which was more about safety and the road and our busy street corner, and them getting outside our fence line, and because of their age being the same age, running different directions at that young age where I couldn't chase both at once. So that was my perception of safety, keeping the kids safe. And the shopping centre, I never had a problem ever. They didn't even ask for anything. Or if they did, I just said yes or no, depending on what it was. And they were happy with either answer. So it depended on my personal perception.
Yeah, again, and it's like what you were saying before, Carly. If you had something that you intended for your son to do, you were better off just setting your intention and not actually saying it.
Yeah, because when I say it, it definitely projects onto him my perception.
Yeah.
And he don't like it.
Instead of just bypassing perception and going straight to the intuition and guiding his intuition, I guess, is what you sounds like you ended up doing.
Hmm.
We will have to stop at number 5. But today,
Remembering that
anyone-
we've done number 6 though.
yes, we have done number 6. We don't need to do that one again and deal with his loneliness. And I can reformat the page so we have number 7 on one page and we start next week. So who has their little phrase or word that they want to leave for the rest of the week with us? Carly?
I wrote or have, in the state of being, the mind gives everything always.
Nice. I love that.
I second that.
Yeah.
Great choice, Kelly. I even
I'm going to
chose
write
one.
that down. In the state of being. Can you say that again?
In the state of being, the mind gives everything always.
Nice. Is
Paragraph
that
5,
actually
the last sentence.
right? Oh, it's right there. Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. So that's yours as well, Joe?
Yes.
Jane?
Come back to me.
Okay. Carly?
The part of what I like in that chapter 6 was that he has no ego with which to accept such praise and no perception with which to judge it.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah. Lady Linda?
Oh, well, this is probably going to sound ridiculous, but anyway, it was my intuition that thoughts can be communicated without distinctions. I'll have to think about that. That could be a cause for conversation the next time we meet.
Yes. Yes. Have a contemplation on that one.
We'll make it 6.A.
Mine is I allow my full expression of my creation. Jane?
My mind is nothing compared to my spirit.
Nice.
Hmm.
Love it. Well, thanks everybody. I have got a message from Gary.
Thank you.
And he said he was sitting there waiting to come in, and apparently I didn't see them come up as a thing, so I don't know what happened there. So I'll resend the link to him to make sure he's using the right link, maybe. I don't know. He wasn't meant to be here today.
No, clearly not.
All right.
Right.
All right,
Thanks,
lovely
everybody.
people.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Loved everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.